Good morning, New York, and hello to everyone joining us from around the world. My name is Nicholas Manousis. I am the Executive Director of the Horological Society of New York, and it's my pleasure to welcome you here to our January 2022 meeting. As usual, let's get started with a few announcements. First off, Happy New Year. 2022 is HSNY's 156th year of continuous operation, and we're looking forward to it being a wonderful year on all accounts. And some announcements: you may have seen our sponsor grid growing on that title slide. I'm very happy to announce the international haberdasher, the Armory, has joined HSNY as an official sponsor. You can see I'm wearing one of their jackets today. I'm very pleased that they are joining us as a sponsor, and we thank them for their incredible support. And this is also a very exciting announcement. HSNY's Board of Trustees goes international this year. We are welcoming two new trustees to our board, both very famous independent watchmakers, Mr. Roger Smith and Mr. Roman Gauthier. So we're very pleased that they are going to be joining our Board of Trustees, contributing at the board meetings, and helping guide us along as we enter our 156th year of operation. A quick education update. As always, we have our New York evening classes going on every week in our classroom here in Midtown Manhattan. And we have a New York weekend class coming up in January 29th. We also have our virtual classes, which are still available if you're not in the New York area, and if you'd like to join us virtually, we have that as an option as well. Our Horology and Art exhibition is ongoing. It's on display now through April 2022. It's at our library in Manhattan. I encourage everyone to book an appointment and please come and check out and enjoy this very wonderful exhibit. You'll see that that temporary wall full of amazing artwork that all has some aspect of horology in it. So please book an appointment and come by our library and enjoy the exhibit. It's really something very interesting to see. And of course, save the date. Our 156th anniversary gala is coming up on Saturday, April 9th, 2022. We'll have much more details on the gala to be announced very soon. All right, so on to the main event. So personally, for me, chiming watches, when I hear them, it just brings a smile to my face. I think they're amusing, they're fascinating, and there's just an incredible history that goes along with chiming watches. They've just endured. They've been popular in the past, and they're popular today. And today we're going to be taking a deep dive looking at chiming watches with one of the modern masters on the subject. He is the Bvlgari Product Creation Executive Director of Timepieces, joining us live from Neuchâtel, Switzerland. I'm very pleased to welcome Mr. Fabrizio Buonamassa. Fabrizio, please take it away.
Ciao a tutti, Happy New Year, and welcome in Switzerland, in Neuchâtel, in our office. It's a great pleasure to be here with you. And this is my first interview of the year, so I'm very happy again to be on air. Let me say, after the vacation and again after the COVID, it's not so easy here in Europe. So here we are to talk about watches, to talk about designs, to talk about inspirations. And I would love to start with a short introduction of myself. I started to make sketches when I was more or less 4 or 5, and I never stopped. Still today, it's the biggest part of my day, of my job. It's to make sketches and imagine the object that doesn't exist yet. I started my career in the automotive industry. My first passion was to design in car. I joined the Fiat Group in 1997, and after it was immediately Bvlgari in 2001. I joined Bvlgari because for me, from the beginning, was clear that is a not common brand when we talk about watches. As you can see, the Bvlgari history is different if you compare with the other watches and even jewelry brand. It's a brand that was born in Rome, in Italy, thanks to the idea and the incredible vision of Sotirio, our founder. And Sotirio started as a silversmith, but immediately we have to say that thanks his two sons, George and Costantino, Sotirio became a jewel maker, and they start the beginning to use, it was the first brand to use cabochon on-cut, colored gemstones and play with different materials. And we start to play with watches, let me say, more or less 100 years ago. It was a ladies' watch, it was an eye jewelry watch. And after we talk about more or less 1937, 1942, we start our Serpenti saga. Still today, it's our most reckonable sign that we have in watches, in jewelry, and even in accessories. Today, Bvlgari is a very huge brand. We have 5 different business units. We talk about watches, jewelry, perfume, accessories, and hotel and resorts. Here in Switzerland, we have our headquarters for watches. 2 manufacturing sites, very important for us, in Les Sentiers and in Saint-Léger. So in Les Sentiers, we produce the most iconic movement. And in Saint-Léger, we try to produce, I'm honest, all the case, the bracelet and the dial about our watches. This journey started in 1999 when we get Manufacture des Horlogeries with Daniel Roth and Gerald Genta inside. And we start to develop this amazing know-how with a huge effort in terms of investment, people, and know-how. And today we are very well known for the ultra-thin execution, even thanks to this amazing know-how that we find in Les Sentiers in Manufacture des Horlogeries. On the ladies' side, we are very well known, as I said before, for the Serpenti. On the male side, we are very well known for the Octo. Octo is it's a different journey, because we started to develop the Octo in 2004, 2003, if I remember well, when we get Manufacture des Horlogeries, and we decided to again develop the Gerald Genta brand. So the Octo was designed internally. At that time, Gerald Genta, Daniel Roth doesn't have a design center, so they use external consultant, and they use the Bvlgari design center in Rome. So when I joined Bvlgari in 2001, one of my first job was to imagine a metal bracelet for the Octo and some dials for the Octo Grand Complication watches. Today, the Octo is a completely different product, let me say, because when in 2009 we decided to integrate, to have just one brand, not even more Bvlgari, Daniel Roth and Gerald Genta, because it was too hard for us to manage at the time 3 different brands. So we decided to have just one brand. And we decided to completely redesign and rework on the Octo, starting with the Octo Originale, so with our minute and second movement, automatic for the first time in the Octo. And after we start to imagine an evolution of this sign, and we start to imagine our evolution in the ultra-thin execution. I'm honest, we started with the manual winding tourbillon on the Octo Finissimo. It was the first Octo Finissimo watch in rose gold case, but the first, let me say, for me, the most important one was the minute repeater, because in a certain moment, we start to develop this kind of way to imagine a mechanical movement. And we discovered this amazing know-how inside our manufacturing inside in Les Sentiers, even thanks to this minute repeater, the thinnest minute repeater that still today is on the market. And this is the watch. This watch is very unique, because it was, let me say that for the first time, we have a minute repeater with this kind of design, with this kind of aesthetics and this kind of material. As I said before, Bvlgari is a Roman brand. Bvlgari, our roots come from the Italian industrial design. And the topic here was to have an ultra-thin octofinissimo with this kind of movement. But as you can imagine, the movement, it's the very small hammers and very, very thin gongs. So as you can see, our aim was to amplify the sound. This is my role. When we talk about ultra-thin execution and when we talk about minute repeater and chiming watches, if we're going to have a parallel in the automotive industry, it's like, let me say, a concept car or something very, very difficult to do. The chiming watch is a completely different in terms of approach. The idea of this watch was to amplify the sound because, as I said before, the hammers and the gongs are very small. And that's why we have this dial with this opening, because the idea was to use our 12 and our iconic indexes to open the dial and to try the way to have the best quality of sound as possible. During the meeting, for sure, we made several meetings when we developed the Finissimo minute repeater, but the most important one was when we decided to have the material and the aesthetic of the watch. Because in a certain moment, the idea was, the question was, which kind of material we have to use for this kind of minute repeater. And my answer was, I would love to use the titanium. They reply, and the feedback was not so, let me say, was a bit cold. Fabrizio, we are in Switzerland, and this is the most noble complication that you can imagine in the watchmaking industry. So we would love to use a noble material, a precious material like gold or platinum, white gold, rose gold, because we don't use to make chiming watches in titanium. And I say, okay, I take your point, but we have an issue. We have the issue to amplify the sound, and we have the issue to create a new aesthetic for this watch, because we don't have a watch with this kind of feature on the market. That's why I would love to use titanium. And let me say that if we can use titanium, I want to see titanium, not polished surface, grade 5 titanium that looks like platinum or steel or white gold. I would love to have a gray, stealth, sun-blasted finishing with the same color for case, bracelet, and dial. The minute repeater on the Octo is the true turning point of the project, because we presented this watch the year after, if I remember well, was 2015, during the Basel Fair, and the appreciation was amazing. The first watch, the manual winding tourbillon, at the same time had an amazing appreciation. But you know, it's a tourbillon watch with a rose gold case, 30 pieces. It was, yes, Bvlgari is able to do it, but it's a technical exploit. It's just 30 pieces, and that's it. When we introduced the year after the minute repeater, the appreciation was again amazing, but we start to introduce a new aesthetics. And everybody say the watch is amazing, the aesthetic is amazing, doesn't exist a watch like that on the market. And during the same period, in 2015, we already developed the automatic one, and we changed completely the design of the dial thanks to the minute repeater in titanium and thanks to this kind of look. So when we design this kind of pieces, it's a completely different job, because all the elements that is inside the case that you cannot see has a very strong impact in terms of resonance, in terms of quality of the sound. We are very well known, thanks to the Manufacture des Horlogeries, thanks to the amazing watchmaker that we have in Les Sentiers, because we are able to produce more than a chiming watch. This is the first one, and it's the same movement that we use on the ladies' side. But today I want to show you another one, because this is another amazing movement, and this is a completely different job. As you can see, it's a different animal. We are not talking anymore about ultra thin execution, but maybe it's an ultra thick execution. I think that still today, it's one of the most complicated watch that you can find on the market. It's an automatic movement, completely different from the previous one. I'm sorry for the light, but it's very tough to find the right point of view with the right light. The case is made in carbon. The movement is a tourbillon with a calendar, for sure. As you can see, we have the moon phase, we have the date, we have the leap year, we have the date of the week, and we have the month. So it's a perpetual calendar. We have 2 different power reserve for the watch and for the chiming. And you can use the chiming if you want, or you cannot use. You have to turn this push button that we have here to have silence or to have the sonnerie. Completely different watch. Now I think you can see the hammers on the other side. I'll try to do my best. I'm sorry. It's on the other side. I don't know if you can hear the sound of the chiming. I'll try to do it again. Now maybe it's better. Ah, here we have another microphone. I'm sorry for that. So this is a carbon fiber case, completely different sound, completely different design. As you can see, is a carbon fiber case. We don't have the dial. We have the crystal sapphire instead of the dial to see all the levers and the disc. Just to tell you that these watches are the watches that we use during the presentation, during our exhibitions. So it's the watch that work like crazy, and we push the button more or less every 15 minutes. Just to tell you that it's a strong enough the movement, but I don't know if you can hear the quality of the sound through the microphone. I want to show you. I'm sorry, but with the gloves is absolutely impossible. It works, I think, yes. Okay. This is the other one. The minute repeater, the thinnest one in titanium. As you can see, different hammers, different sound. I'll try again. You can see the hammers. Okay, so 2 different movement, completely different movement. Both of these movement has the hammers on the back case. The first one, the first chiming watches with the hammers on the dial side, it was the Daniel Roth, the carry-on tourbillon. It was a movement that we developed more or less, if I remember well, 10 years ago, more or less, and was the first time for us to have a watch with the hammers on the dial side. Today, we decided to completely change a lot of components of this Daniel Roth movement to have this watch on the Octoroma case for the first time. And now I'm showing you a brand new watch that we didn't present on the press yet. So it's just for you. is it's a brand new watch with a completely different design in terms of dial. We completely change the movement if you compare with the Daniel Roth one. And for the first time, we have the hammers on the dial side. This is the watch. It's a blue platin. The dial is different if you compare with the first version, because on the first version, we didn't have the indexes and the 12. It was completely, let me say, a naked dial. Today, we decided to change the color of the platin and to add the 12 and the indexes. As you can see on the other side, we have the blue elements. Even on the other side, we have a small power reserve. The watch, as you can see, is a manual winding tourbillon, and completely redesigned the main plate, and we completely redesigned many components of the watch. Now I'll show you the hammers on the dial side. As you can see, this is a 3 hammers. The other 2 are 2 hammers. The inner case is completely different, is a blue, as you can see. The other one is in carbon. So just to tell you, these 2 watches are the Octoroma watches with carbon and metal case, are 2 completely different products for us. So when we change the material, we're starting from scratch. It's a brand new development, even because for sure the movements are different. But as you can see, the construction of the case, it's more or less the same, because we have the inner case. And now it's the black one that starts to chime, because it's 12 o'clock on the dial. But just to tell you, this kind of watches, just to assembling one chiming watches like these 2 Grand Sonnerie that we have, we spend more or less 4, 5, 6 months. It's a very long process. And the watchmaster that we have in Les Sentiers, we have 3 watchmasters able to assembling this kind of watches. The watchmaster must be the same. So the same watchmaster start the development, start the assembling process, and finish the assembling process. Because to be able to assembling this kind of watch, you must have a very, very unique talent. And after more or less 15, 20 years that you play with watches, you could start to assembling chiming watches in our atelier. The process is very complex, because you have to imagine that just the watchmaster can imagine the quality of the sound. The quality of the sound, you discover the real quality of the sound just when the watch is in this condition. So it's completely assembling with the screws, with the dial, with the gasket, with all the elements of the case. So that's why during the process, the watchmaster assembling and disassembling the watches several times to have the final, the right fine tuning, because most of the components has the fine tuning made by hand, the hammers, the gongs, for example. So you have to imagine that the process assembling and disassembling the watch more or less 2 or 3 times. As you can see on this case, we have some opening on the back case. Again, it's to have the best quality of sound as possible. And even on the middle case, you have the opening on the side. This is all the elements that have very strong impact in terms of design. When we start to imagine a new Grand Sonnerie, a new chiming watches, we have to take in consideration all this kind of aspect, because the watch is more or less like a concert hall. And the problem of the concert hall is that you are in the concert hall, so you can hear the sound. But when you have a watch, a chiming watch on the wrist, you are outside the concert hall. So the problem is to amplify the sound and to give you the best quality of the sound as possible. You have to imagine that we have the movement with the multi-layers movement. Sometimes we have the hammers in this position and you have the gongs. So we have parts of the movement that is outside and on top of the gong. And now I'll show you the sketch. You have the ring, you have the bezel, and you have the middle case. More or less, this is the construction. And you have to imagine that the sound, the hammers touch the gong, and after you have the ring with the gasket here, and you have all the sound that comes out, comes out in all the directions. This is the most difficult things. So our idea and the things that everybody wants to do is to have thinner case as possible, to leave a lot of air inside the case. Because if you don't have air, you don't have a good quality of sound. It's like a speaker that you have at home when you hear music. This is the biggest challenge. The other one is the gasket. The gasket that we have around the movement between the middle case and the back case, all the gasket that you have around the crystal sapphire. So sometimes you have 4, 5, or 6 gasket. The gasket is a plastic part. The problem of the gasket is that it absorbs the sound. So inside the case, you have some components that are able to amplify the sounds and some components that absorb the sound. For sure, when you have the gasket, you are obliged to have the gasket to have a certain water resistant. Now you can see the camera in the screen. This is fantastic. I don't know why. Just to have more light on the watch. No, the idea was to have to see the sketches. Okay. Oh, this is fantastic. Now I have to design on your side. So this is the movement. Here we have the hammers sometimes, or sometimes here we have the hammers, and here we have the gongs. So this is a section of the movement. This is the hammers and this is the gongs. On top of that, you have the crystal sapphire, the bezel, the case, and the back case with another crystal sapphire. So this is more or less the space and the environment that we have. On the octo, it's not so easy because, as you can see, and you know, it's a mix of different shapes. It's the combination of the square and the round shape case, just to have the octagonal case. But the movement is not octagonal. So the movement is a round shape movement with hammers and with the gongs. You have to imagine that here we have the tourbillon, here we have the centrifuge, we have the power reserve on the back side, we have the tige for the case, we have the hands. So when we have the hammers that touch the gongs, this is an octo watch. Okay, sorry. So this is an octagonal watch. So we have a lot of materials on this side. Around the corner, we have a lot of material. And this is not good for the sound. That's why we try to open as much as we can the internal section of the watch. Mostly the chiming watches are in the round shape, and the movement it's very close to the end of the case. So the hammers are very close to the glass and are very close to this kind of point of the case. On the octagonal shape is not possible. That's why we have to imagine to have a middle case with the opening, the back case with the opening, because we have a lot of gasket. We have a different shape for the gasket. We have a different shape for the case, and the watch is huge. But now I want to show you a completely different watch. I'll try, I hope that it works. And I want to show you our ladies minute repeater. This is the watch that we introduced, if I remember well, 3 years ago. This is the 3rd edition. As you can see on the back side is the same movement of the Octo Finissimo minute repeater with a completely different case design, with a completely different material. And the sound is different because the case is a smaller case, completely different thickness, completely different design, the same construction for sure. And now I'll try to different design, different material. Here we have a thicker dial because, as you can see, it's a malachite dial with the chatons. We have diamonds on the case. We have a completely different construction. If you compare the same movement with the different aesthetics, with the Octo Finissimo and the Diva's Dream minute repeater, the sound is completely different. It's a smoother sound if you compare with the titanium. We produce Octo Finissimo minute repeater in titanium and in carbon, and it's 2 different material for two different sound. The process to develop a chiming watches is a very long process. Now we are starting to imagine the evolution of some of our movements, and we are talking about 4 or 5 years of development. And for this kind of complication and grand complication watch, even if you have your manufacturer inside, you know when you start and you never know when you finish the development. And let me say something. When I joined this company, we were developing a very unique movement. It was 4 years to develop the movement. And after 4 years and a half, we have seen the first prototype. In a certain moment, we say, okay, guys, but now it's too late. And I'm honest with you, we never used this movement because it was completely out of the box, and it was not anymore the right moment. When you have your manufacturer inside, you can manage your lineup in a very different way because you are not obliged to buy movement. And you can imagine to have your own complication. That's why we have these amazing watches, because today we have our manufacturer inside, and that's why we have the Octo Finissimo, that's why we have the Carillon Tourbillon and the Grand Sonnerie Perpetual Calendar Moon Phase, because we have our manufacturer inside. But on the other hand, it's not so easy to manage it because you have to develop and you have to imagine and you have to start to manage your complication in-house. And you spend 3, 4, 5 years to have the right watch. On the design point of view, we start to imagine the watch as I can show it before, just from my point of view on the paper, with markers, with ballpoint pen, with fountain pen, with pencils. And we start immediately to work with the watch masters that we have in Les Sentiers in Saint-Léger. As a design center, our responsibility is to take care about all the components that you can see around the watch. When I say all the components, I say the buckle, the push button for the buckles, the crown, the push button on the case, the hands, the indexes, all the finishing, all the dial, and all the finishing and the shape of the bridges, the shape of the components on the movement. So it's a very long process. And we are driven by design, and we are driven by the art, let me say, an amazing craftsmanship. The art of miniaturization today, it's our mantra, and we started with the Octo Finissimo, let me say, more or less 10 years ago. And still today, it's our way of thinking. And the Finissimo changed completely our perception in terms of watches. Today, when we wear a different watch of the Finissimo, we start to make comments about it's too thick, the bracelet is too thick, the case is too thick, the crown, and change completely our paradigm in terms of constructions. We are very proud about the success of the Finissimo. We are very proud about the success of our Chiming watches. Again, it's one of the company with 5 different Chiming movement on the lineup. It's incredible. All our minute repeater, the Diva's Dream, and the Octo Finissimo has a great success. The Grand Sonnerie Quantiem Perpetuel, we are able to produce sometimes 5, sometimes 6, sometimes 3 per year. The Octo Roma Carillon Tourbillon is a limited edition. Again, we are able to produce 15, 20, 25 pieces per year maximum. All this movement that I show with you, it's comes from our manufacturing side, is 100% in-house. And we try to develop, to imagine, develop, and produce all the most strategic asset for our watches in-house. In terms of design, we develop all the elements of the movement. So we develop the tourbillon bridges, we develop the main plate, the shape of the hammers, the shape of the gong with our watchmasters. And it's a back and forth for months, sometimes 6, 7, 8 months to find the right shape, to find the right solution in terms of materials. Materials are very important for the Chiming watches. The geometry is very important for the Chiming watches. So it's not so easy. Let me say that it's like a Formula 1 car. It's like a concept car. It's the pinnacle of our skills. And on the Finissimo execution, for example, but even on the Grand Sonnerie and on Three Hammers, Carillon, Tourbillon, all the you have to use all the components that make sense. We don't have enough space, and we don't want to have space for applied decorative elements, because we think that with the Chiming watches, all the components has a very, very unique way to work it. And when we have the Grand Sonnerie, like this watch that you can see in carbon, we are talking about more or less 1,000 components. 1,000 components for a watch is absolutely incredible. It's crazy. If you imagine that we are able to produce 4, 5, sometimes 3 pieces about this watch with more or less 1,000 components is absolutely crazy. The things that we love is this kind of craftsmanship. The watch is completely made by hand. Again, on the back side, you see the opening. And the carbon, it's a very difficult material. We have to use a specific technology, and it's not like an alloy. It's not like a metal alloy. So it's a completely different challenge if you compare with this kind of watch or with the other one, with the Finissimo one. As you can see, different client. Our collectors often are Chiming watches collectors. Sometimes we have collectors that makes a lot of comments about the quality of the last note, or the last note is too smooth for me, it's too long, it's too short. It depends of the material, it depends of the movement, it depends of your taste. Chiming watches is let me say, it's something that you can imagine. It's an audiophile product. You love your music. Jazz is different from classical music. Opera is different from jazz and from classical music. So it's a matter of taste, it's a matter of movement, it's a matter of shapes, and we have to be able to combine all these elements together. I don't know if you have questions. I've seen some questions on the screen.
Fabrizio, that was a wonderful lecture. Thank you very much. It was just fascinating to see and to hear those watches up close. So thank you again. We do have some questions coming in, and I want to encourage everyone that's joining us live. If you have questions, please use the Zoom Q&A feature. It's at the bottom of your screen. You can type in a question for Fabrizio. Fabrizio, if I may start with a personal question.
Yes, please.
Why do you think the minute repeater, the chiming watch, why does it have such an enduring popularity? It seems like it always has been popular from the beginning of watches up until today, whereas maybe other complications, other features, other design ideas have gone in and out of fashion. Why is the chiming watch always so popular?
But I think that is so popular because it's a different way to tell the time. So you are not obliged to read the time, but you can hear the sound, the time. It's incredible, honestly. If you think about this small piece of mechanic can tell you the time every 15 minutes. It's absolutely incredible. It's the most incredible things that you can make with the small levers, with the small elements inside the movement. And maybe that's why the chiming watches are so popular. Our chiming watches are even different in terms of design. You know, often chiming watches has a very classical approach with the thin bezel, wide face, very, let me say, conventional materials. But here on the desk, we have carbon, we have white gold with diamonds, titanium, and we have a different movement. Here we have 3 different chiming watches, 3 different movements, with different materials, with different aesthetics. This is a part of our DNA. But coming back on our question, I think that it's so popular and it's so unique because when you hear the sound and when you see the levers that activate the hammers, the centrifuge that start to turn in a very incredible way, you say, wow, it's something, let me say it's a miracle, but it's not the right question. It's not the right word. It's something that you cannot imagine, honestly. Yes, it's a watch that makes a sound, but when you see in person, when you hear the sound, and I'm sorry, I don't know if through the mic, you are able to hear the right quality of sound, but when you hear the sound, when you see the levers that start to activate the hammers, the centrifuge that turns, and you see that is 100% mechanically, 100% made by hand, it's something absolutely unique.
I agree. I should tell you that the sound was very loud and clear. I could hear it perfectly. So thank you to your AV technicians. They did a great job with the video and camera setup and the microphones. It sounded great. So we've got some questions coming in here. Maybe we can start with a question from Matthew Lopez. Matthew asks, do you see that the same innovations from Bvlgari with the Octo will be integrated into the newly revived Gerald Genta brand?
It's a very interesting question. You know, today, now we have a Gerald Genta brand with the Arena. We make, the last one was a Smiling Mickey, huge success during the Geneva Watch Days. The watch, I think it's sold out. It's a 2 different brand, completely different brand. With the Gerald-Genta, we can make a lot of things that we cannot do with the Bvlgari. Bvlgari today, it's very well known for the Octo Finissimo watch. It's very well known for the eye jewelry pieces for ladies. It's very well known for the aluminum watch and the Serpenti for sure. Gerald-Genta is a completely different brand. We have to say thank you to Gerald-Genta because when we bought the Manufacture des Autres Horlogeries, we found an amazing know-how. And thanks to this amazing know-how, today we are able to show you this kind of product. But Gerald-Genta and Bvlgari are completely different brand. And I think that is a completely different approach. Today we have the Arena watch, different materials, two different size with the smiling Mickey. We are very happy about the success. The idea is to develop Gerald-Genta as 100% digital brand, and we will see for the future. But today we don't want to mix and match different aesthetic, different brand DNA, and different know-how.
All right, understood. Next up, we have a question from Tony Hernandez. Tony asks, is there a filter built into the case openings to prevent debris from entering the movement? So I believe he's asking about the ways that you open up the case to let sound escape. Is there some type of
Yes.
filter there? How does that work?
Yes, I'll show you. Again, I have to make some sketches. I don't know if it's possible to, I have to turn the camera. I'll try. No, it's not. Okay. Now I'll do it in this way. It's easier for everybody. Now you can see my paper. Okay. So on the back case, for example, we have a crystal sapphire. It's here. We have a metal part, and the metal part is completely open. On top of that, we put a net, and we have full of gaskets. So the sound can come out through the metal and through the opening, and we have the same construction on the side. So on the side, you see that the case is made with this opening. With some of this opening, we have a direct connection with the movement. So here we have the movement. The idea is to have the thinner case, middle case as possible. That's why we have this kind of opening. We need a certain rigidity because we have to fix the movement, the bezel, and the back case through screws. So we need a certain thickness. But the idea is to have in a certain part of the case a very thin surface, because in this way the sound comes out. Otherwise, the sound of the case rests inside the case and you cannot hear almost nothing. So that's the problem. But the idea, that's why we have all this opening, to have a very, as you can see now through the light, we have some column. Inside this kind of vertical column, you have the screws to fix the crown, the bezel and the back case. On the right, on the left-hand side of this column, you have the opening. So the thicker is, it's honestly, it's an ultra thin case. Now you can see some opening, and we have the same construction at 12 and 6. As you can see, you see the column and the opening. I'll try to manage it. Echo. Okay, now you can see it. So let me say that it's a skeleton construction for the case, and this is a skeleton construction even for the back case. And we spent more or less 1.5 years just to develop this kind of feature. And the movement is amazing. We completely redesigned the main plate, because at the beginning was with the Daniel Robb shape case. Now it's a round shape design. We completely changed the shape of the bridges. We completely changed many components. On the other side, we remove completely the dial and we open the upper bridge. So now to the upper bridge, it's a completely skeleton execution. You can see all the components. And again, I cannot resist. Now we have the right. As you can see, we have 4 elements that start working when I push the button. Is the 3 hammers, is the centrifuge, and the elements that give the force to the hammers to turns. And it's absolutely unbelievable. That is, look, you cannot see the centrifuge because it's turned so fast. And that's why we have the energy for the hammers. And again, to reply to your question, maybe that's why the chiming watches are so unique, and that's why it's so incredible. It's the mechanics that start to become alive, to tell you the time in a different way.
This is an absolutely beautiful watch. I'm looking at the bridges, and I see the light blue color. Can you tell me what are the bridges made of, and how did you achieve that finish and that color on them?
The bridges are made with the same material that you can see on the other bridges. So it's a metal alloy. Have to be strong enough, but at the same time have to be smooth enough to have this kind of open work executions. And the blue, we have you could have different way to have the color on this kind of components. Is a DLC coating or is a PVD? It depends on the color. It depends on the thickness. For example, on the Octo Finissimo, we cannot use this kind of finishing because increase the thickness, and we have some problems in terms of way to work of the movement. So you have different technique today that give you the opportunity to have this kind of color. As you can see, the bridges are blue with the matte finishing, and the case, the middle case, it's blue with a completely polished surface, and the internal part of the case is sandblasted. Just to give you an example of just to show in a better way as possible the design. That's why we have matte and finishing surfaces. The watch is absolutely stunning. It's the first time, I'm honest, that I see the watch completely assembling, and I'm very happy about the results, because during our meeting it's not so easy to see the chiming watches completely assembling. During our meeting, sometimes we see some components, we see all the components, but for the first time now I see the watch in a let me say final configuration.
It's stunning. It's incredible, and I really appreciate you showing it to us as the world debut, world exclusive here. Thank you.
Yeah.
So we have some other questions coming in. There was here we have a question from Gautam Sham, and Gautam asks, where do you see the line of the Octo Finissimo in the next 5 to 10 years? How is the evolution of this watch going to continue?
This is the question. Honestly, we're very happy about the results. We have a lot of records. We are still working on this kind of execution with some novelties, let me say. But this is the question, the point. Today we have a lot of movements, we have a lot of complication with the ultra thin executions. We play with steel, we play with titanium, with ceramic, with carbon, with gold. We love to play, and I love to play with common material in a conventional way. But the Finissimo S, for example, let me say that is the biggest success. From the beginning, the request was to have a 100-meter water-resistant watch with the screen crown. From the beginning, from the automatic titanium. Today, the market and the Octo Finissimo lovers is split in two. So 50% of our clients and Octo Finissimo lovers prefer the titanium without the screen crown, because still today is the thinner one. And the other 50% prefer the Finissimo S because it's, let me say, more versatile. Screwing crown, steel bracelet, steel case, blue dial is sold out, is the most incredible in terms of sales today. It depends. For sure, Finissimo is our, let me say, flag. It's our signature on the male watches, and we are still working on the Octo Finissimo. We will see on the future. Today we have the chronograph, the automatic one. We have the chrono tourbillon, the tourbillon, the minute repeater. We have a lot of movements. For sure, we will see in the future some novelties. We are still working on new movements. I'm honest with you, and we will see in the next future and even in the next years new execution. But this is the point. We have a lot of things. As you can see on the desk, we have 4 different watches, 3 Octo, completely different, and we have a Divas Dream watch. Creativity, it's not our issue, and we have a lot of ideas, and we have 2 manufacturing side that loves to work in this way, because each time we try to break the rules, not just for the Finissimo, but even on the ladies side. We are coming in the next future with some interesting novelties, and we will see. But for sure, we have to find a way to manage all this creativity in a very, very, let me say, consistent way.
Understood. That's a good problem to have.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
And now to the Octo Finissimo, we have a lot of good problems to manage. Yes. The scarcity of the product in the boutique, the blue is sold out, all the minute repeater, let me say in titanium, it's almost sold out each time. The Divas Dream with the malachite, and the previous one was with Aventurine, it's almost sold out. So we are very happy overall about the results.
All right. Speaking of the ladies' watch, the Divas Dream that you have, we have a question from Anne Pedro. And Anne asks, well, she says this was a wonderful presentation. She asks, could we see the ladies' watch with a malachite face a little closer, please? And yes, what other gemstones do you use for the dial of that watch?
We are very famous for the colored gemstones. On this Divas Dream, we used the diamonds. This one is with the malachite. In the past, we used aventurine. In the past, we used different stones. But let me say that the problem of this kind of dial is not the quality of the stones, but is the aesthetic of the stones. It's not so easy to find the right stones in terms of the aesthetics, and the problem is the aesthetic of the dial just when you open and you break the stones. So to produce, let me say, 20 dial, the supplier must produce 40 or 50, because each time we say this is not good, we don't like it, we like it, we like it, we don't like it. So honestly, it's even this kind of things, each dial is different. As you can see here, we have a certain gradient in terms of dark gray, dark green and light green. And the supplier arrives and they present all the entire production, and we say yes or no, yes or no. So it's a very long process. This time we present this Divas Dream with malachite. The malachite is even on the small charm, and the rest of the case is made with white gold and diamonds. Even the small second counter is made with diamonds and the chaton on the dial. The watch honestly is amazing. It's a great success. It's the first time that we made the Chiming watches on ladies, and the collection it's very well known. Come from the jewelry, our jewelry. Let me say DNA. It's a great successful collection that comes from jewelry, and even for us, we are very happy about the results of Divas. because when we make with feathers, when we make with the peacock feathers, when we make with this kind of execution with the minute repeater, it's almost sold out in few weeks.
Well, that's great. Speaking of ladies' watches and watches with these special gemstones in them, what was the collaboration with MBNF like? How did that come about?
The MBNF was a crazy collaboration, let me say. The collaboration was born 4 years ago, during my first 4 or 5 years ago, I don't remember. During my first Dubai Watch Weeks, Max comes to me and to introduce himself and say, I would love to have a collaboration with you because Bvlgari is an amazing brand. I love Bvlgari since when I was a child. One of my first watch was a Bvlgari watch. And the job that you are done with the Octo Finissimo is absolutely amazing. So I say, wow, thank you so much, Max. It's something that honestly touched my heart because everybody knows MBNF, everybody knows the job that Max have done during the years with MBNF and before with Henry Winston. But it was not the right moment. We start immediately to make sketches and to discuss about the idea. But it was not the right moment. And during the Dubai Watch Week, if I remember well, it was 2000 before the COVID. It was the last one before the COVID. Again, we say, I would love to have a collaboration with you and I would love to have a watch with you. But it was the right moment. And immediately we involved Antoine Pan, the managing director of the watches business unit, in the discussion. The day before, we had the breakfast and lunch at the Bvlgari Hotel, and we start immediately to make sketches again and to discuss about the watch. For Jean-Christophe Babin, the idea was immediately, wow, we presented the sketch and they say it's an amazing watch, for sure we have to do it. The watch was born during a Zoom meeting. During the first lockdown, it was the first meeting with Max and the MBNF team, and they developed and they showed us the Flying T, because during our first meeting, the Flying T was not on the market. But after the second meeting in Dubai, the Flying T was on the market. So they start to introduce the Flying T, and we start to discover the Flying T. Honestly, the idea was to have a ladies' watch with MBNF movement designed by Bvlgari. And I know that Max is obsessed, let me say, by UFO, by all the robots that come from Japanese manga in the 80s, yes. Like me. We are more or less the same age, so we have the same ideas. We love cars. So in a certain moment, I say, Max, this movement is a great opportunity for us because, you know, we are very well known as one of the most iconic jewel maker. Very well known for the cabochon cut stones, huge stones, but it's impossible for us to use it in a watch. And thanks to this three-dimensional tourbillon, for the first time, we have the opportunity to play with these huge stones around the movement. And I immediately have seen something in my brain, in my head, and I make a sketch, like the sketch that I made in front of you today. And I say, Max, this is the idea. What do you think? And Max say, amazing, fantastic. Go ahead, and today we have the watch. I'm sorry, we don't have anymore the watch because it's for 40 pieces, 20 for Max and 20 for Bvlgari, sold out immediately. The last 3 pieces was sold out after the presentation during the Dubai Watch Week. And we are very happy about the results. But, you know, we start to have a collaboration at the beginning of our history because a lot of Serpenti watches has a movement that comes from different Swiss watchmaking brands. So when Max say, I would love to have a collaboration with you, I say, for me, it's amazing because it's a part of the Bvlgari DNA. So today, it's a contemporary way to have this kind of collaboration. And we immediately started to imagine the watch. It was a very, very smooth process. We just discussed a bit about the way to setting the diamonds on the bridge, because on the BNF you don't see the movement. You don't see the dial is a bridge of the movement, and the way to fix the huge cabochon cut stones on the dial. because we know very well this kind of métier, and Max, it's more on complication. But the collaboration works in a very, very incredible way.
So following up on this, are we going to see more collaborations with other brands in the future?
We will see, because you know, this is a small company. Even if we produce, we have 4 different Chiming watches on the table. We have a lot of Finissimo, but just to tell you something, these 2 watches has the same movement. The Diva's Dream watch and the Octo Finissimo has the same movement. So we have to be able to follow the request of these 2 movements, because otherwise we don't want to make watches just to make an advertising or just to make a wow effect on the market. The idea is to make watches and to deliver the watch for our clients. So still today, we try to do all our best to have 30 Carillon Tourbillon, 5 Grand Sonnerie Quantien Perpetuel, if I remember well, 15 Diva's Dream with this dial, and 30 minute repeaters. So for us, it's a huge work. And even if we don't make the MBNF in our manufacturing site, to follow this kind of project with a very, very incredible level of complication, for us, it's a huge effort.
Yes.
So we will see in the future.
Okay. So I also want to ask you a question about your competition. So maybe you've seen the new watch from Patek Philippe, the advanced research minute repeater watch that they just recently announced. What's your opinion of your competition's work with Chiming watches and minute repeaters? Do you like what you see from the other brands? Does it provide some good competition and future ideas for you? What do you think about that?
Honestly, I'm not a watch master. So for me, even during my presentation, as you can see, I cannot go in deep about the way to this kind of movement have to work. It's difficult for me to judge the movement that comes from other brands. For sure, when Patek makes this kind of movement, it's more or less minimum 5 years of development with an amazing features, with amazing savoir-faire. Honestly, it's difficult to judge. I can tell you that in terms of design, maybe we are different. We have a different history, we have different heritage, we have different know-how in terms of aesthetics. We love to play with pure shapes. I don't love to play with applied decorative elements, but we have a different history. We come from Rome and we are a jewel maker. Patek is one of the most iconic Swiss watchmaker brand. So our client is different, and even the expectation of our client are completely different. I think that it's very important that each brand has to be consistent with his own DNA. Because if we start to make the same design of the same watches of other brands, immediately you start to say, but Fabrizio, why you change the design and you are more classic if you compare with Diva, with Serpenti, with the aluminum of the Bvlgari of the Octo Finissimo. This is not our taste and this is not our DNA. So I think that Patek have to follow his own DNA because it's a very unique and it's absolutely incredible in the watchmaking community to have such an iconic brand like Patek, like Audemars, like Rolex, or many other brands. Bvlgari is different. Bvlgari is a jewel maker that makes even unique timepieces. And this is what I have in terms of DNA from this brand. I'm not obsessed by to be the first one, the most incredible one, the first one. We have Serpenti, we have Bvlgari, we have the aluminum, we have Lucea, we have Diva's Dream and the Octo. As you can see, it's difficult to find on the market another brand with more than one iconic products. And let me say that with Serpenti, Bvlgari, and Octo Finissimo, we have 3. And we just talk about these three timepieces. So I think that it's important. Each brand has his own history, his own DNA.
Agreed. How are you feeling? Maybe 1 or 2 more questions. You're feeling good?
If you have maybe one
more question. Okay, let's see. So we've got this is an interesting question from Mark Goller, and this will be our last question for today. Mark says, thank you, Fabrizio, for a wonderful presentation and for your enlightening sketches. Mark is wondering, why do the gongs on minute repeaters operate so rapidly and do not give a chance to the vibrations to really propagate? Think of the bells that chime in the church, they're much slower. So why are chiming watches, why do they chime so quickly?
This is a very good question. I don't know if I'm the right person to reply, honestly. It's a matter of rhythm. The energy comes out from the barrel. And the barrel of these chiming watches has all the energy that even have to use the hammers to the gong. Honestly, I think is the rhythm of the movement. When you push the button, you start to see the centrifuge that start to turn in a very incredible way. And the centrifuge give the time to the hammers. Each movement is different. When you hear the bell of the church, is a completely different way to work, even because the sound must be slow, because have to go far and far from the church. Here we are talking about a small movement. The activation is through a push button or a lever, and the energy comes from the barrel. In a certain moment, I think the last notes are the most difficult one, because the last note arrives when the barrel give you all the energy. So that's why in a certain moment with certain chiming watches, you start to hear that the rhythm change when you arrive at the last 2 or 3 notes. This is the most difficult things for the watchmasters, because our idea is that the quality and the performance of the sound must be the same during the entire execution. But honestly, this is my idea. If you want to have a more precise question, maybe we have to ask to our watchmasters. I'm sorry for that.
No, that's an interesting question. I'm trying to think of an answer myself. The only thing I could think of, maybe it's just history. It's historically, the bells at a church have just been slower because they have been slower. And the wristwatches are faster just because that's the way they've always been done. It's a great question that we need a historian to answer.
Could be.
Fabrizio, I want to thank you again for this incredible lecture. Thank you for showing the new watch, and thank you for showing us your sketches live during the lecture. That was really a nice touch. I really appreciate you giving the first lecture at the Horological Society of New York in 2022.
Thank you so much. It was a great pleasure, and I'm very happy to start the year with this kind of lecture, and with a very important association for the watch cultures. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you everyone for joining. We'll see you next month. Have a great rest of your day. Goodbye.